What's going on, guys? So today we have a pretty good topic. We're going to discuss youth training. Now, although most of my experience in strength and conditioning is with the high school, collegiate, and professional athletes, I do have some experience working with some NBA guys, some NFL guys, some MLB guys, and I also have a little bit of experience working with youth athletes. However, I do want to dive deep on youth training just because I get a ton of questions from parents like, hey, when can you start accepting my kid into your training program? Why don't you train anybody under 14? Like, should they be strength training? Does strength training stunt their growth? And just everything in between. And so what I wanted to do on this podcast is break down some of the stuff about youth training that I believe people should know, parents specifically, so that way they can prep their athletes what I believe to be a better way than what we're currently doing in today's society, so that way they can be ready for better training when they become 14, when they get into high school, and they're actually ready to start specializing. Okay, so to start this thing off, I believe that the downfall of youth training begins with specialization at an early age. And so what is specialization? It's when you do one sport for a long period of time, or one specific thing for a long period of time. A lot of people think that specialization is just training for a sport, okay, like one specific sport. So I get phone calls all the time from parents who want to get their son involved in training that trains them for baseball, okay? But there is no such thing as baseball training in the weight room, okay? There's no such thing as baseball strong in the weight room. You're either strong or you're weak. That's it. You're either explosive or you're not explosive. That's it. You're either fast or you're slow. That's it. There's not like a baseball specialization thing that happens. What sucks is that on social media today, you will scroll through and you'll see all these specific exercises that are put in place for usually much older athletes that are just portrayed to the audience without any background as to why they're actually inputting these exercises within a program. And so when a parent sees these exercises, they're like, oh, that's something that my baseball athlete needs to be doing when he's like 10 years old. Okay, it definitely is probably not. All right, and so what we do in the U.S. is we usually start specializing at around 8 to 10, and it has nothing to do with the training. It has everything to do with where their training economy is actually focused, meaning they spend a majority of the year doing one sport. Okay, I can't tell you how many 14-year-olds I have trained that have only played baseball their whole life, and that the only sport they did after they were 10 years old was baseball, or from the time that they were 8 years old is just baseball. And those athletes always have a very, very low ceiling because they didn't build the foundation early. Those are the athletes that I work with now that have to catch up for the next 3 years just to get close to the other kids their age, just to get close. Okay, so unless you're genetically gifted and puberty does a real number on you, playing one sport at an early age is not ideal. My recommendation would be to play multiple sports. Okay, and the reason for that is because you're going to build a very wide base. So think about this as a pyramid. At the very top of the pyramid is going to be sport specialization. That's like the very specific skill of playing that sport. And at the bottom is going to be your wide foundation, your base. I call it GPP, general physical preparedness, because it's a lot of general stimuli to help prepare you to be a better athlete, a better moving human by the time you're ready to start specializing. Okay, so from 8 to 10, my recommendation is to get in as many sports as you possibly can. Expose yourself to things like jiu-jitsu, gymnastics, boxing, learn how to strike, learn how to jump, learn how to swim, go into a swimming class, do everything you can, basketball, football, wrestling, anything and everything at random times throughout the year. Because as that athlete builds a very wide base with their athletic foundation, they're going to be exposed to all sorts of different movements. Those movements are going to help them specialize later on, okay? I think what gets lost in today's day and age also is the law of accommodation. So this law states that it is the decrease in a response of your body to a constant continued stimulus. So basically when the athlete specializes early, that constant stimulus is just playing the sport over and over and over again. Who do you think is going to develop better throughout their high school years, their teenage years, when puberty actually hits, when those hormones start to take place, and they can actually pack on some lean mass and start to really make some changes in this game, who do you think is going to develop better and faster? The kid who played 5 sports growing up and has just been all around doing all sorts of different movements and has exposed himself to all sorts of different stimuli, or the kid who has just played baseball? I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? So at the bottom of the pyramid, like I said, it's GPP. We want to make sure that we focus on that, not just when they're early, but even as they age. So like at the beginning of the offseason for our high school, college, and professional players, their GPP phase, we call it accumulation. In that phase, they are trying to accumulate a ton of volume and a wide array of movements. Okay, they are doing a lot of general physical preparedness stuff. Very general exercises, nothing extremely specific. Obviously, for our pro guys, they have a little bit more specificity involved in their training than our untrained 14-year-old that's just starting with us, right? But that's kind of beside the point. This is about youth training. But I think it's important to let you know, like, once you build the base, it doesn't just go away and you just specialize forever. Like, you still have to focus on the base regardless. I have 26-year-old guys in pro ball right now that are still focusing on the base regardless of the time of year. It's very important that that stays apparent in their training. And so when should you start specializing and when should you start weight training? My opinion is, if the athlete knows at 14 years old when they enter into high school that baseball is going to be the thing for them, and they've already built a very good base doing other sports and other activities prior to them becoming a freshman in high school, I think that at 14, it is completely fine to choose one sport, isolate on it, and spend all your time, effort, and energy trying to get very good at that one thing. Okay? If the athlete is actually good at multiple things and they have not decided yet that baseball is going to be the thing that they really want to pursue in life, let them continue to do all of them, okay? Because it's only going to help them. As long as they're pretty good at the ones that they want to choose, I'm assuming that these athletes want to go to college playing a sport. They want to get a college scholarship or they want to play a professional sport. Assuming that's the case and they haven't really made a decision yet, just let them go for a little while. But by the time they get to 16, unless they're excelling extremely at both, usually it's not going to be more than 2 sports, but if they're excelling extremely at both, then I would say let them go. And if they're not excelling at those 2 sports, choose one. Choose one that you can isolate on. Chasing 2 rabbits at once is going to be extremely difficult. At that point, now the other kids are going to start to catch up and pass you. It's because they're going to be isolating on one sport at that time. But you have the one up on them because you've developed an extremely wide base. Think about most of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL played baseball growing up. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them. Most of the best players in the world in any sport played multiple sports growing up until it became time to focus on one. Okay, and so that time frame is going to be a little different for everyone, but my general recommendation is that most of you are not genetically gifted enough to do 2 at a very high level anyways. The 99% of you aren't going to be good like that. So you probably by 16, you'll know which one you're going to excel at more and just chase that one, right? At that point, from 16 to 18, like, you're almost a grown-ass man. It's not necessarily about just having fun anymore. You got to start thinking like your body is a business, and making good investments now is going to benefit the business later on. I think that most high school kids, it probably starts at the parents at the top, but most high school kids just think, I'm just going to chase my passions. And then they wake up when they're 17, uncommitted. They're playing 2 sports. They're kind of okay at both of them, and they haven't really made a decision yet. And so they just kind of falter out of sports after their senior year. And that's a pretty sad thing. Because I think that if you have the ability to actually move on in this game and get a college scholarship playing something, why not chase it, right? If that's going to be the thing you want to do, you got to put your best foot forward. Okay, so does weightlifting stunt growth? Absolutely not. The research is pretty clear on that. If anything, it only helps you. I have a law here that I think a lot of parents don't know, a scientific law called Wolff's Law, and it states that the load under which a bone is placed is increased. Okay, so basically, when you stress a bone over and over and you continuously increase that load on that bone, the bone then naturally reconstructs itself and becomes stronger to withstand additional strain. So basically, it's just going to adapt to the stimulus placed upon it. Your ligaments and tendons also adapt to that stimulus. Everything in the body adapts to whatever the environment is that is placed upon it over time. Weightlifting does not shrink you. It doesn't make you worse. It doesn't hurt you. Nothing. Now, obviously, you should have a knowledgeable coach running your athlete's training, something that is very progressive in nature. something that exposes them to a wide array of movements and develops a really good foundation for them. Nothing that is highly specific, especially at a young age, right? But starting weightlifting at around 8 to 10, just getting good at basic movements like lunging, squatting, push-ups, pulling, rowing, things like that, learning how to hinge. Like those little things are completely fine. It's not like you're going to have that little 13-year-old kid go hit 1 rep maxes all the time. You know what I'm saying? At that point, yeah, you might be, in some trouble there. But the idea is that you just expose them to more movements and help them become a better moving human and also progressively increase their strength. When you go to watch, my kids are all 6 years old and under right now. And when I go to watch their youth sports, they're involved in everything. When I go to watch their sports, the biggest, strongest kids right now always win. And guess what? It doesn't change. The biggest, strongest kids usually always win. On any ball field, it doesn't matter what the sport is, the biggest and the strongest and the most explosive are usually winning, okay? Especially in these team sports. So knowing that, it's like we should be putting the right foot forward for our athletes, for our kids, to try to make that a goal later on in the future. But it doesn't happen by just choosing one sport at a very early age and going and getting 5 specialists to help them increase every attribute of their life in that one sport, right? I know parents who have hired sprinting coaches to help their kid run faster because on the baseball field he's a little slow. Throwing coaches, hitting coaches, strength conditioning coaches that only work with baseball players because that's the one thing that they want to get done. And that strength conditioning coach usually just loads baseball movements and mimics what they do on the field and calls it sports specificity. And the parents are like, oh, we're doing everything we can for our son. But I promise you, in that moment, you're actually hurting him. He's not getting exposed to enough things. By the time he gets to 14 years old, those other kids that have developed a base, they're going to be much more athletic or in a better position than he is in order to start getting actual, real specialized training in the sport, okay? Which happens on the field, by the way, not in the weight room. All right, so I think that it is extremely important for parents to realize that your athlete is going to be, he's not you. Like he's not going to be everything that you want him to be. And if you isolate all of your time trying to build him to do this one very thing in life, it's going to be a hard uphill battle for him when he actually starts facing other kids that got exposed to everything else. Okay? And I think that's a hard pill to swallow. I know because I played baseball my whole life. I have a son. As he gets older, I'm not going to force a baseball down his throat and make sure that he only isolates time on that. If he plays baseball, he plays baseball. But at the end of the day, my goal is to try to expose him to everything and see what he's good at, where his passion lies. And then now that I know based off my education and my training after working with athletes for the last decade, by the time he's older, 2 decades, right? At that time, I'm going to know when the right time is to start getting him specialized. And so I hope that this information helps you guys make decisions on your training, on your athletes' timeline throughout their year, because there's a lot of decisions out there right now that can drastically affect where they go in this game. There's a small one really quick, and then we'll end this podcast. Last one I want to talk about is these 14-year-olds that I'm working with right now. The big thing to do is play summer ball and club ball and start playing year-round. Okay, in Arizona especially, which is where we're located, they've been playing year-round since they were like 8 or 10, like I already said, because it's a hot state and they can play year-round because of the weather. In California, they're doing it as well. And so my goal for these athletes when they come in is to really educate them and the parents on where they're currently at and to let them know summer ball and club ball when you're 14 years old makes absolutely 0 sense. You're getting invited to all these showcases because maybe your athlete's good right now at 14. Unfortunately, nobody gives a shit. Nobody. Besides the people that are inviting you to their showcases and to their camps, because at that point, you're boosting their wallets. But nobody really cares, okay, about how good this 14-year-old kid is. Nobody cares now. The rules are changed until they're about 17, okay? But our goal is when that 14-year-old athlete comes on to spend that year in development. I don't care how good you are at baseball right now. We're trying to make you a better moving human so that way by the time you're 16, you can actually have something to show and not just get crossed off the list because you're underweight, underdeveloped, you don't move very well, you don't pass the eye test, and you're not very good at baseball. Like that's usually what happens with these athletes. And so for our 14-year-olds, we're completely banging summer ball, completely banging club ball. And I wished from 8 to 14, they didn't do baseball year-round either. So that way, by the time we got them, They had an extremely good base built. We spent that 14-year-old year all the way up until they're a sophomore in high school, just developing. If they're good enough as a sophomore, start sending them out to a few showcase, starts to get some interest. If not, do it again. Develop again. Because at the end of the day, the process is the process. You can't outrun it, and everybody's going to be genetically gifted and different at different times of their life. And so some people will progress extremely fast at 14, others won't. Others, it'll take a couple more years. But at least you don't, put your foot in your mouth and screw yourself by just trying to chase baseball and over-specialize yourself forever. Okay, so I'm pretty passionate about this subject because I get a ton of parents that send me DMs, send me emails, call in for consultations, try to get their kid involved in our training, and we simply just don't have the means here in this facility at this current time to be able to provide that youth training atmosphere that they need. Because youth training is not just hitting the weight room. It is a lot, and you get that from playing multiple sports and being involved in a wide array of different things. Okay, so I hope this information helped you. If it did, please like, subscribe, share, let some other people know. Thanks.